Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today's game, or rather compilation, is Renaissance 1, which was a 1990 release from Impressions developed by Toxic Waste. It was intended to be a collection of new takes on classic arcade games, offering both classic and contemporary options, and it features graphics by Stu Cambridge, who would go on to be part of Sensible Software, and music from David Whittaker. I've actually got a physical copy of it here as well. So here we are. Renaissance, offering 4 classic computer games. So it's basically a compilation of games rather than one thing, but it was distributed as a single package. Here's the back of the box. So we can see up there we've got sort of classic style Space Invaders and some other bits and bobs as well. So the blurb, it says, Renaissance, the rebirth. Renaissance offers you 4 of the best ever computer games. Games you know, and games you know you'll love. But Renaissance is far more than just 4 addictive games. It offers you the best of both the past and the present. A unique concept, Renaissance offers 2 versions of 4 arcade classics, Invaders, Rockstorm, Megapede and Draxians, I'm sure you can work out what they all actually are, providing the purity and familiar addictive playability of old, as well as the great graphics and sound of the present. The classic version offers you one of 4 arcade favourites, complete with all the classic playability. Contemporary versions add stunning new graphics and sound, and add loads of exciting new twists and features such as extra weapons, aliens and shields, to make the gameplay even more addictive. The result is an unrivaled collection of arcade mayhem which will keep you playing into the early hours. Renaissance, it's like having 4 coin-ups in your home. Now, I don't know if this copy we had was just a pre-release version or not. Judging from the disc, it looks like a final commercial copy. This is one that my brother reviewed for page 6. Is the only reason I question this, but a lot of the stuff in that back of box blurb is complete bollocks. It says that the contemporary versions have enhanced graphics and sound. Yes, they have enhanced graphics, but they certainly do not have enhanced sound. And I also remember them not having any sign of like extra weapons and special enemies and that sort of thing. So yeah, it says it again in the manual here. The classic version uses simple graphics and sound effects and emulates the classics we all know and love. The contemporary versions use modern graphics and add new features such as extra weapons or shields to bring these hugely addictive games right up to date. Yeah, and it doesn't really tell you anything else other than that. It's got in-game instructions for all the other things. And like I say, the version that I've got here that I remember playing certainly didn't seem to have all the enhancements that it was promising in that back of box blurb. But we'll take another look today and just see if I was missing something back in the day. But I remember being quite disappointed with this back then. But it's time to give it another chance, I think. Let's go play Renaissance. Okay, here we are with Renaissance from Impressions. Like I say, I remember liking the idea of this back in the day, but also being quite disappointed with what the actual implementation of it was. So the idea is that you've got these 4 different arcade games, which are very obvious clones of real arcade games, and you can play them in classic or contemporary mode. If you play them in classic mode, they're designed to resemble the original arcade version, and if you play them in contemporary mode, they're supposed to have enhanced graphics and sound and power-ups and all that sort of thing. So, let's start with Draxians, which I'm sure you can figure out what the source material is, and we'll start with classic mode. I did always like the little floppy disk animation for the loading screen on this. Right, classic Draxians, which, well, it's Galaxian with a scrolling background. I'm going to sneeze. Oh dear, excuse me. Oops. So yeah, it's Galaxian with not very good sound effects and slightly jerkier movement than the real thing. And I'm just as bad at it as I am at real Galaxian. So there we go. Let's try again. They're really hard to hit when they're swooping in this. I feel like you need to anticipate their movements a bit more, and it also feels like they come a bit more obviously for you than in actual Galaxian. So yeah, I think the important thing is just to not try and take too many risks, because just sort of blasting away is seeming to give me some better results this time. So here we are on level 2. Oh no. Yeah, it's really difficult, this version. I mean, like I say, I make no secret of the fact that I'm pretty bad at Galaxian anyway, but it just feels like it's almost impossible to avoid stuff in that one. Right, anyway, so you get the idea of how that works. If you press the spacebar to return to the main menu, we will now have a look at the contemporary version, which is supposed to be very different in terms of presentation, and also add some power-ups and stuff. So let's just see how different it really is. There we are. So similar title screen, but you can see the new graphics here, which are very brown. I actually prefer the classic style graphics in this one, just because it's very brown. But as you can see, it's pretty much the same gameplay-wise. It's slightly slower, actually, which makes it slightly easier, if anything. But you'll notice, yes, there are enhanced graphics. No sign of enhanced sound, though. No. We've still got those shitty ST sound effects. And also, I see no power-ups. I see no shields. I see no fancy things. And you'll notice that the high score table is the same as the other version of Draxians, suggesting that there's not really very much different going on here at all. Let's have another try at that. Yeah, if anything, I feel like this version is slightly easier, just because it runs ever so slightly slower than the other version. Not really sure why, because it's doing pretty much the same thing. I mean, I guess the only thing is it's probably using slightly more colours at the same time. But in terms of the number of things happening on screen at once, maybe some slightly more complex animations. But yeah, it still has the same sort of fundamental gameplay issues as the classic version does. No sign of power-ups, no sign of improved sound effects, no sign of almost anything they promised on the back of the box, aside from enhanced graphics. Which I remember being very upset about when I was a kid, because I thought, oh wow, I'll be able to play these arcade games with great new graphics and sound and that sort of thing. There might be some sampled sound. No, there was still that. Those weedy one-channel sound effects. You hear your shot sound even interrupts the explosion sound. They didn't even bother to put the different sound effects on different channels. Disappointing. Anyway, that is Draxians. Let's take a look at Invaders and see what they've done there. Because maybe Draxians was just a one-off thing. Maybe they did a better job with the other games. So Invaders, I'm sure you can predict what this is going to be. Here we go. The classic version of Invaders. Has a few little differences from the arcade version in that you can't destroy the barriers. Which kind of diminishes one of the core sort of risk versus reward things of the original Space Invaders. But that said, aside from that, this is a competent version of Space Invaders. The actual graphical style of this version mimics the original Taito arcade machine quite well. It's not identical, but it does a pretty good job of capturing the flavour at least. And it's also not quite as unreasonably difficult as Draxion is as well. So this one, much better job. If anything, this version is a bit too easy because of the fact the barriers can't be destroyed. Which, as you can see, makes it genuinely quite hard to get hit. That absolute... What? Okay. I was absolutely hitting things that were not there then. And I shot the one on the end and it didn't get destroyed. Okay, maybe this isn't quite as competent as I thought it was. It's not awful though. I mean, as Space Invaders adaptations go, it's alright. But, you know, this is also the Atari ST. It's a 16-bit platform. It should be able to do a good version of Space Invaders. Yeah, happened again. I hit that and it didn't explode. Oh, dodgy collision detection ahoy! Yeah, I'm... Right. Yeah, that bullet is just going right through them sometimes. And sometimes it makes the explosion sound and doesn't actually destroy them. And then there! Why did a bunch of them just disappear for no reason? Me thinks this could have used a bit more playtesting. And me thinks the marketing people should have probably checked if all the features they promised were incorporated before listing them on the back of the box and in the manual. I feel like I'm being very harsh on this, and I mean, I probably am, but I also think it deserves it to a certain extent because, you know, what it was promising is a cool idea. Here's some arcade versions brought bang up to date with new features and graphics and sound and that sort of thing. But the fact they did such a half-assed job of it is, yeah, kind of worthy of criticism, I think. Particularly when it's this buggy. I mean, it's nothing game-breaking or anything like that, but you don't want dodgy collision detection in a shoot-'em-up. Especially not in an homage to the shoot-'em-up. Oh dear me. Now, interestingly, that is the same high scores table that there was for Draxion. Different game. Everything on the same high score table. Okay. Spacebar to go back. Let's have a look at contemporary Invaders. But I think you know what to expect by this point. There we go. Oh, I'm itching to hear these enhanced sound effects. There we are. That's a grey and brown again. Now, this time, interestingly, we do actually have a slight tweak to the gameplay. In that the bases at the bottom are moving. Also, the size of the sprites is different. Your little base at the bottom is smaller, the aliens are smaller. So this does at least provide a slightly different feel to what was going on. It's still pretty easy, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that the collision detection is still dodgy. And those alien designs are actually a lot less interesting than the original Space Invaders. But again, you hear we have no sign of enhanced sound effects. There's no power-ups. The only tweak to the game mechanics in this is the moving bases at the bottom. And again, we have the same issue where a bunch of them just explode for no reason at the start of the level. And I suspect when we die, our score will be recorded on the same collective high score table that is used for all of the games. So thus far, what I'm getting from this is that you should pay your QA department more. Yeah, same bugs there. And that if you don't have a QA department, you should probably form one. Yeah, because there's just so many like little sloppy mistakes in this that like you'd maybe forgive in a public domain release, but this was a full price commercial release. This would have cost you 25 quid. And yeah, it had a nice box and underwhelming manual. And it's a nice little collectible, but as a game, or a compilation thereof, it's rather disappointing. That said, I'm still playing it, so, well, I think that's more testament to the timeless quality of Space Invaders than the actual quality of this package, though. What I find quite interesting about this is that Impressions, from what I remember, were a software house that were known for pretty high quality releases. they're not a company that I like super remember or anything like that, but I do have like vague memories of their strategy games in particular being well regarded as being very polished and good quality. So for them to put out something this half-assed was a bit of a surprise, really. But I guess it wasn't developed by Impressions. It was developed by this company called Toxic Waste, whoever that was. And like I said in the intro, there were contributions from people who would go on to great things. Like Stu Cambridge, who would go on and work for Sensible Software. David Whittaker, who was already a well-established figure in video game music. My patience is starting to wear a little bit thin with this now. See, that just went straight through it. It absolutely went straight through it. That one I missed, I'll freely admit that, but... oh, make it stop. Can you make it stop? No, you can't make it stop. Let's just... I guess I'll die. Alright, enough of that. You're starting to get the idea with this now. Next, on to Rockstorm, which I'm sure you can guess the source of. The Rockstorm is, of course, Asteroids. Whoops. And not a terrible version of Asteroids, it has to be said. I remember this being not quite noteworthy at the time for a lot of the versions of Asteroids that we'd previously seen adapted to home computers had sort of specifically avoided trying to look like the vector graphics of the arcade version, whereas this is one that actually embraced that aesthetic. Anyway, you get the idea of that, right? So that one sort of embraces the vector graphics aesthetic of the arcade version, which is nice, because as I say, home computer versions and home console versions of that didn't typically do that. Then we got the contemporary version of this, which again, brown and purple, and mechanically identical. It's interesting that this game's sort of defense system is actually a combination of the different defensive functions you could use in Asteroid. So you pull back on the joystick and it does hyperspace and a shield. So that kind of gets around the obvious shortcoming with the hyperspace thing in the original Asteroids, in that you could just warp straight into danger. However, you may be able to determine the problem with this because you can just do this. And because there's no limit on how much you can do that, it pretty much makes the entire game completely meaningless. And this works in the classic version as well. So this isn't something that was added for the contemporary version. It's something that they just apparently didn't think of. Yeah, so I shall refrain from doing that for now, otherwise we'll be here all day. But yeah, I mean, this is an okay version of Asteroids, but there are better versions out there. Like, even Paradox's version of Asteroid Deluxe is better than this. And to say Paradox Software's version of anything is better than something is, yeah, you know there's an issue. I'm deliberately dying, by the way. I know I could be moving around to avoid these asteroids, but there just doesn't seem to be any point, really. Anyway, we're nearly done. But I think you're starting to get the... you should be getting an idea of what my beef with this collection is now. I was hoping that the version I had was just a pre-release version. And that, like, if I... this version I'm playing here is a copy I grabbed from Atari Mania. I was hoping that there was like a later version that added all the stuff that was supposed to be in there, but no. No. Nope, this is all it is. Right, Megapede, which, you know, it's a slightly jerky version of Centipede. Like the classic versions, they've nailed the look of the originals. Just the movement isn't anywhere near as smooth. And the firing in this isn't nearly as satisfying as in the original Centipede, because if I remember rightly, in the original Centipede for arcades, I think you could fire more than one shot at a time. But in this you can only fire one. That's a horrible spider sprite. That worm going across doesn't seem to actually do anything to the mushrooms. I think it's supposed to. The spider doesn't wipe out the mushrooms like it does in some versions. It's just all very bare bones. It just feels like the developer's going, yeah, those old arcade games, they're really simple. It must be super easy to make a version of those. And they will make one with good graphics as well. Because all we need to do to make one with good graphics is just replace all the sprites. Don't need to do anything to the gameplay. Please don't tell anyone that's what we've done. Yeah, and that high score table is ridiculous. Just have one high score table for each game. It can't be that difficult. Right, on to our final thing for this little exploration. Is the contemporary version of Megapede, which I think you probably know exactly what to expect by this point. Now, we got green instead of purple this time. Still lots of greys and browns though. And as you can see, the same jerky movement, the same one shot at a time gameplay. The same lack of features compared to the original. Yeah, this package is such a disappointment. I'm glad I revisited it though, because for years I've been wondering if I was missing something about this collection, but no. No, it turns out it was just a collection of lies, damn lies. Just a collection of subpar arcade conversions with 2 different graphical styles, poor sound effects, and a whole string of broken promises. Anyway, that is Renaissance. And this was Renaissance 1, remember, although it didn't say that on the actual packaging for it. On the title screen, this is referred to as Renaissance 1, so presumably they were planning to do more of these, but I guess, I don't know, I didn't see any particular reviews of this anywhere, but I remember my brother being fairly unimpressed with it when he looked at it for page 6. I'm not sure what issue it's in, though. He was fairly unimpressed with this. I was fairly unimpressed with this, and so I guess they just decided that it wasn't really worth continuing with. Which is a shame, because as I say, the concept is sound. Doing classic and contemporary versions of arcade classics is a perfectly sound, sensible thing to do. And the 16-bit platforms would have been a good time to do it, because it would have been a good way of showcasing how the 16-bit platforms were superior to the even old arcade hardware. But they just didn't do enough. They just didn't do enough, and they didn't implement solid enough versions of the original arcade games in the first place. So the whole thing is just rather underwhelming, unfortunately. But it is what it is, and, well, now you know. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.